Hi everyone, welcome to COYS Live, the 14th one I think. Thank you for a couple of audience members joining us today. We have competition today in the ratings war with the England team. We've got Gary Southgate's England team with his team of right backs playing Tottenham past and present Belgium lineup with all our ex-targets and players, it seems, looking at the lineup. I'll hand over to our panel to introduce themselves.
Hey, Nick-Topspursman.
Lex Luthor.
And I'm cdcd, so I'm Chris. Hi. So we've got a lot to talk about today, and well, great place to start is obviously the transfer window, which, to use a Sky Sportsism, slammed shut the other day. And yeah, so we obviously brought in our 6 players, but the ones sort of in more recent times, I think since the last COYS Live, I thought we'd just go through and talk about them. Should we start with someone you may or may not know much about, Gareth Bale. Nick.
Now, I had to just get that out of my system.
Yeah, okay, keep it coming. Nick, what do you make of this then? Obviously, you were pretty excited on the forum.
Well, I was actually saying to Prof before that when in the past when we've been linked to Bale, I've always played it down on COYS. I've always said, well, he's getting injured all the time. He's not going to be the same player. And honest to God, one of the reasons I did that is because I never wanted to allow myself to believe he was actually going to come back. And I didn't want to have the heartbreak of it, of thinking, oh my God, he's coming back, and it doesn't happen, and you really get upset. So I never got that upset in the past because I never allowed myself to believe it. But when Prof posted this info from Galahad, obviously, which was obviously spot on, I thought, oh my God. And I was thinking, because of the timing, it might actually happen. You know, it's got a little bit more of a chance. But I think, when was it that it really kicked in? Was it like the Tuesday
night? Tuesday night after the Everton game, wasn't it? And I think we needed it.
Yeah, it's when his agent came out and said that negotiations were ongoing and that he wanted to come to Spurs.
And it was on BBC. And it was on BBC, and I went, my God. I literally stopped everything I was doing. I don't think I left COYS for about, 72 hours straight. So, my wife hates me. So, I just saw it and I thought, oh my God, this could actually happen. And then it was just surreal. It's still surreal now. I like to see him in the training. I'm like, what? I don't understand. It was good. And it's just, I'll talk about like what I think about it as a player and stuff with Lex in a minute. But just in terms of, this is the best signing we've ever made in my entire life. I was only 7 years old when we signed Klinsmann. I didn't understand football like I do now. It was great. It was fun. It was cool. But this, to me, is like, it's tops Van der Vaart. I love that signing. But this is like Bale coming home. I love nostalgia. I love like family and you know, when there's a real connection between players and fans. I believe in that, and it's something I really believe in and care about. And for him to say, I love Tottenham, I always wanted to come back, I want to come home, that really resonated with me, and it really set me off. And I was like, oh my God. And I spoke to my dad for hours about it. We were just I'm going again now. I can't believe it. Lex, you take over.
Yeah, Lex, what do you think we're getting out?
But I kind of.
How are we getting back?
Well, I think that's a good question because he hasn't played a lot recently. He left as a very explosive, more deep running, powerful winger, a wing forward who would shoot from distance or cut in and shoot or maximum do a cross. But I think I was talking to Nick earlier as well that he's actually developed quite a bit as a player in Spain. He's a more complete player now. He can go through the lines, give the ball, can join in combinations. So I think we're getting a more clever and complete last third player, which will suit Son and Kane and Lo Celso quite well. That it's not just going to be the speed rocket of a power runner anymore. So even if he's not as explosive as we remember him, which he might be, I don't know. But even if he's not, I think we're still getting a useful player as a player. On top of that, I think we're getting a psychological boost, aren't we? Like, I think the whole dressing room, I think a bit like Nick's reaction was probably a bit like a lot of the players' reaction, like, holy shit, Gareth Bale's coming back.
Yeah.
And I think you can almost feel it, can you? Like the way the players played, like how terrible we were against Newcastle. And then if you look on, it's like, you can almost feel like the squad, the dressing room is buzzing, isn't it? Like there's a new sense of like a competition, a sense of possible achievement, I think. And so I think it's not just who we're getting in terms of quality as a player, but also what it means psychologically and what it gives us in squad depth. So I think there's more levels to it. just the player himself.
I think as a player, like he's not going to be like he said himself. He's not going to be making these like 70-yard runs. I've never seen a player that had a sprint within a sprint. I was saying before we started that he could be sprinting, and then he'd sprint even faster within that sprint. Yeah. And that's what did people. That's what they couldn't live with. Mike Conn's running full pelt, and then Bale is already running full pelt and goes even faster. He won't be doing that over 50, 60, 70 yards. But he'll still have...
that's very few players
some speed. Yeah, he'll still have some speed to go past players. He might, like Lex said, though, he'll condense it more in time when he does those runs, and he'll condense it into that final third area. So he won't be doing it from inside our own half, but he'll make sure he does it to beat a left back or beat a right back or beat a centre back and create space like that. But I totally agree with Lex about his completeness. He uses his right foot more, crossing. Like Madrid, he was on the right. He'd often go on the outside and cross it with his right foot. He had more skill. He developed a lot more skill on the ball. He mentally knows what it takes to win the biggest trophies. He mentally knows how to deal with pressure, as he said himself, because handkerchiefs come out when you have one bad minute from Madrid, let alone a bad game. You play one bad minute, they'll want you out. He can still score from 30 yards, 20 yards, from 10 yards, wherever he wants to whatever he wants to do, he can do it. And we got a free kick taker. So the thought of him...
He scores when he wants to.
Yeah, it does.
Now we have two of them.
Him, Kane and Son. Just, I was playing FIFA the other night.
Jokes aside as well. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm saying you were playing FIFA, but almost like FIFA, jokes aside, how many teams have 3 players who can all score from outside the box with 2 feet?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Inside, outside, each way. And one thing I said, I remember saying, I put something on COYS a while back, which I stand by to a point, but this is before it all sort of broke. And I said that the longer Kane is at Bale is at Madrid, I think the more likely the transfer became, but possibly the less desirable it became. Because obviously getting older and change, I think maybe the one thing I underestimated when I made that post probably a good couple of months ago now, before it all kicked off, was the psychological impact, as Lex was saying, about what it would have on us. It gave everyone such a huge boost. It's an intangible we couldn't possibly have imagined, I think.
No.
But yeah, I mean, obviously he didn't come alone. He brought a friend of him, didn't he? So, who is, I'm going to butcher the name, I'm sure, Region? Sergio Region.
I'll just say Regulon. Okay.
I'm calling him Reggie Lyon.
I can't do the rolling BR, what he was doing. And I'm half Greek and I still can't do it, so I won't bother.
Region.
What?
So talk to us about what do you make of Lex? Did you see much of him at Seville? Or
I actually saw him mainly at the Europa League knockout games when he was playing for Sevilla as an extremely attacking left back, and then I've seen him before that as well, because I think you were into him signing even before that, weren't you?
Yeah, I'd seen little bits of him. I knew about.
Can you hear me? Because I've got.
Yeah, just a slight delay, Lex. That's all. A slight delay, I think. I'd seen him. A little bit of him. I knew about him because of his Madrid connections.
Okay.
And there was a little, I'd seen a bit of him without realising I'd seen him until later on, which was when he played for Madrid in 18-19 season. But I saw him a bit at Sevilla, and just like my kind of fullback, basically. Lightning quick, up and down, recovery runs, just wants to get forward, wants to be positive all the time, wants to try and progress up the pitch. Just perfect modern day fullback, really. He can defend to a degree. I think his elements of his game he needs to improve. His rashness is one of them. He likes to dive in and win the ball so much that sometimes exposes himself, or he's overly aggressive. A bit like Rose used to be back in the day. Similar in that regard, they used to dive in a bit, and Rose got better at timing when to go in and when not to. But to me, absolutely amazing signing. Amazing.
He looks a bit rusty. I don't know if you agree. He looks a little bit rusty at the moment, but you can see what he's got, and you can see what he's going to bring. There's just little things at the moment where his timing might be slightly off, or he's just maybe
learning his teammates as well. Learning his teammates and when to make the runs and stuff.
Also, not giving the ball when it's closed. He wants to play the aggressive pass so much that sometimes he'll play it into.
Yeah, and I think you can see like
on the ball, turn and play it off.
has taken it on as well. Like Davies is playing like how he used to, getting up and down a bit more.
Play with a rocket up his backside. I think in the last couple of games he was flying up there. I've never seen him run so fast.
But you wonder how much of it's instructional and how much of it is like, oh, I better,
It's desire, and having a player competing with you brings out the best in real players. Don't care about competition; they want it. They want it to drive them on. And I think you said about rustiness. I think as well. Sometimes he's so fast. Sometimes he can lose his technical touches. Sometimes because he's so quick. Little bit raw in that regard, but I think he'll certainly learn as he gets older, as he develops, to sometimes take that extra touch if you need it, or slow yourself down a little bit before you cross, for example. Little things like that. But his ability to get to the byline and get behind defences and pull the ball back is something we need to work on in patterns of play, because he is fantastic at playing the ball, running off of it and driving behind a defence, and no one can stay with him when he does that. And that could be a real weapon when we break teams down. They might be deep, but if he can run to the byline and cut it back, it's very hard to defend no matter how many people you've got in the box. You can cause chaos by doing that.
Well,
that's an area I'm really excited about.
I mean, you wonder how much pre-season he's had as well, because obviously he got to they won the Europa League, didn't they? So he hasn't played. I don't think he has had too much football before. Well, since that, I wonder.
They played for Spain against Ukraine. I think he had a slight injury during that or after that game, and then obviously started training with us, and then played. Came in against Chelsea and United. I mean, it's a bit of a baptism of fire, that. But I thought after his initial mistake, he really recovered superbly, and
really exciting, isn't it?
I think he showed a lot of fans what he was all about, really.
And then Vinicius is the final transfer of it. I'm going to be honest, I've seen virtually nothing of Vinicius, but he is a striker, which is better than the number 9 we had backing up before. So have either of you seen much of him, or do we know what to expect, or is it just a bit of a...
Again, it might be someone that I've seen without kind of taking note of him, if you see what I mean. I've watched him possibly, but consciously I can't remember having watched him. So really it's just down to the YouTube. I wasn't particularly enamored with what I'd seen in the highlight clips and stuff, but for me, I haven't really seen him. He signed for us. I'm going to judge him purely on what he does now on the pitch for us, and that's all I can do. And it's a striker at the end of the day, Chris, like you said. He obviously is someone Mourinho wanted, which is good, because you want to give who the manager wants. He seems well built, seems relatively mobile, scored some goals for Benfica. He needs to fulfill a very specific role for us, and that's put ball in the back of the net when we need him, when Kane can't play, and that's it really. So
the only thing I noticed in the YouTube videos is that, again, he looks like he wants to play. He can move over distance, especially when he gets going. He's quite quick, so on the counter he should be efficient. And again, he's a big lad to protect the ball, but he can also run. He works hard, it seems like. But we also bought him, I guess, to hold the ball and turn sometimes, to play it off quickly. And there it looked like he used to be a centre back, apparently. And you can see sometimes that when he turns, like his first touch to turn, to get into a turn and then lay it off. Sometimes I'm wondering if that's going to be quick enough for the Premier League.
In the Premier League, yeah. I was thinking that as well.
Look at Werner at Chelsea. He plays correctly, but he loses like half a second in his movements versus the Bundesliga, or rather the defenders are half a second quicker than they used to be in the Bundesliga. And that's the difference between getting off your shot and getting blocked, or getting feeling pressure and not feeling pressure, going by the man or not going by the man. And he's losing those like marginals. He might get it, Werner, with the match practice and getting used to it. But I think the same with this guy. Is he going to be good enough on the turn? Is he going to get that half second his way? Is he going to adapt to getting that half second his way in the Premier League? Or is it going to be too quick for him? Too tight? I don't know.
I think the good thing is that obviously the loan with an option is an incredible piece of business from Levy, because we can't lose. If he turns out to be complete rubbish, we don't sign him. And if it turns out to be really, really good, or turns out to be good enough to do the job for us, we can get him for a relatively good fee in today's market. So it's a bit of a try before you buy. And for a position that we desperately needed a body of some kind.
I suppose the other thing to consider is that if he might take a bit of time to adapt to the Premier League, he may well not play a lot in the Premier League in the first instance anyway, because he's going to be used primarily in the Europa League.
This is what I was thinking as well.
When we were looking for a backup striker, so Premier League experience, I don't think that's the most important thing. The most important thing is probably actually more continental experience, because that's where they're going to play the vast majority of their football. So Because if Kane's fit, he's playing. There's no other sort of
just having the attributes to play in the Premier League. So, like Lex said, my biggest concern is the same as Lex. It's that technical ability to turn quickly and do things at a quicker speed in tighter spaces. The physical side of it, he looks relatively physical, so I don't think that would be much of an issue. It looks relatively mobile, relatively decent speed, so that again doesn't bother me too much for a centre forward. But it's that area that Lex, a very specific area that is so important for a striker. We don't really know until he plays how good or bad he'll be in that area.
Especially because when he needs to do that, it's going to be towards compact defenses, probably smaller teams defending low, and just like, well, you have no space.
Yeah,
basically.
I mean, counter-attacking, he'll obviously get away with it more. And if he comes on in a game where we're winning 2-0 or something, it might be good to bring him on when we're winning 2-0 in a match or 3-0. And the game's open, 10, 15 minutes to get him adapted to it in a bit more space, because the Premier League's still high tempo, even if it's a more open game.
There's a decent comment here from Sinspurs made the comment that a question comes about adapting. Positives are that he's already proved himself adaptable by changing position. Teams already. That's a very fair point.
That's
isn't
true.
It?
Again, another mentality thing. We were talking a lot about signing players with certain mentalities. To me, this is someone that hasn't succeeded. So he's 25. So he's had some. It looks like he's had some ups and downs, but he's obviously established himself now. Yeah. So he must have something about him mentally.
So just
also switch roles.
Sorry, just moving on slightly. In terms of like overalls, so obviously we signed 6 senior players during when there were a couple of youth players as well. But if you were going to sort of give it a grade, let's go out of 10. So on a scale, how would you rate this whole summer transfer window? Lex, what do you think out of 10?
Well, yeah, it's definitely a high rating because basically we addressed every single key position we wanted to address, and even added squad depth and a psychological boost by getting in big name signings who are ambitious and want to win things. And it was the ones the manager wanted. So basically, if what is the criteria for a good window? It's to enforce as much as you can with the funds that you have in the positions you need to. And basically, we seem to have done that almost as well as could be expected. Maybe a defensive midfielder would have been nice because I don't entirely trust wings to step in if something happens to or depending on how we see Tanganga, maybe a secondary centre-back would have been nice as well. But it's almost a perfect window because the only thing you can criticize, some of them arrived late, but given that it was such a short transfer preseason,
it's always going to be like that. I think
it was always going to be late. And if you compare us to other clubs, you were actually fairly early today this season. So basically, you can only really criticize details in terms of incomings, details in terms of timing, and mainly that we didn't sell enough. So it can't be an absolute top grade, but 8.75, 8.5 out of 10. We're getting close to a 9. It's a very good window.
It's hard to judge. Sold more. It's so hard to judge a window in the moment because you really want to judge it. You can judge a window now and you can judge it again in 6 months' time. Because if all the players are flopped, it's a terrible window. But you can't judge that in the moment. It's but obviously then it's hindsight, which is easy. So when we signed 7 players when Bale left, we were all thinking we've done quite well, and it looked like a disaster then in 6 to 12 months later. But based on like Lex said, fulfilling criteria, which are getting the players in positions that the manager wanted and getting the manager's players, his targets, we've done everything we can, bar the centre-back, basically. I think he wanted a top centre-back. I think we needed a top centre-back. The more I've watched us kind of over this last year, the more it's become clear that we need one. But then I think back to COYS Live, and I'm pretty sure when we had these discussions a few months ago, I didn't expect us to sign 7 players.
No.
So for us to actually do that in all of the positions bar one that we actually needed players, quite remarkable, really, when you consider what's going on.
Do you think Davies might start to be used?
Sorry,
Davies?
Possibly. Davies, possibly. I don't know. I think he'll stick to what he's got there with Tanganga as that false centre back. I think we might try and revisit signing Skriniar in January. Because if it looks like people are going to be allowed back in stadiums maybe in January, February, club might have a little bit more funds. If we make it through to the knockout of Europa, February, we might look again in the summer. But
I think
that's the only thing stopped me. I'd probably
underrated.
say an 8. I'd say an 8 to an 8.5. And the only reason I wouldn't say higher than that is because I think the centre back was really key.
See, I disagree kind of there, because I know what you mean, but in a real world where you want also have our best talents progressing into the side and having a pathway, you can't have it both ways. You know,
True.
you can't both have the cake on the table and eat it. If you want Taganga to raise his game, and we're not looking out, he has to have a pathway.
On that note,
regularly.
What I would say is actually it's another plus point that we didn't panic and go and get someone else in. If we'd have got Skriniar, brilliant. But I'd rather get no one than go for someone who is frankly bang average.
Thank God we didn't sign Rudiger.
I wasn't like that enamoured with Diop or anything like that.
No, really.
I'm quite pleased we just went, right, okay, because Tanganga looks very promising. He potentially could be the one, as Simspur says in the comments, it's not over for us yet, because we've got till Friday if you want to pick up, is it Rodon? Swansea as well. He looks relatively promising as well. The other thing I don't think either of you mentioned, which I thought was quite a good thing, was the early loans that we got out, and actually and various loans that we got out to get people experience.
Skip.
I was really pleased with Skip and Parrott getting them out early, because they were then involved in pre-seasons, and they will now be involved in those teams, for the season, because they planned for them early. Prioritising their long-term career path over our short-term needs, I think, was really
particularly with Skip. I mean, obviously Parrott's been unlucky with his injury. Unfortunately, I think he's out for another couple of months. But Skip in particular is really going to benefit, because he's already done really well for them in the first few matches. And like you said, Chris,
he was a month, wasn't he? So.
Having that pre-season and being embedded in the squad, he's not just seen as a lone player coming in to help. He's there as a member for this season.
Can we call him back in case of injury?
I don't know if we can, but I think it sounded to me like Mourinho wanted him to stay, but he wanted to go. And I admire the fact he wants to go out and play.
Good.
And I think for him long term, it's going to be much better for him. Even if players have a tough time, like we saw with Kane, had some tough loan spells, but it worked for him here mentally. It made a difference to him, and that should serve Skip well. He started well, but he's probably going to have some lows as well. And then he comes back to us next summer. Hopefully, he can then compete with Højbjerg for that holding midfield role, because I still think there's a space there, like Lex said.
Well, ideally, you get the likes of Sessegnon, who's got a good loan as well, to I think Hoffenheim, was it? Parrott and Skip as well. You want those guys coming back. You want those guys then really replacing some of the non-homegrown squad players, which gives us a bit more flexibility in the squad, brings the average age down a little bit. I mean, the likes of Skip can replace someone like Sissoko. If Sessegnon can potentially replace someone else in the squad, maybe Parrott replacing someone like Lucas, and so on and so forth. Actually just brings the age down, gives us that more flexibility. We can probably make some sales on those squad players.
But I think basically we've carried through a generational shift in 2 windows. It's pretty insane.
It's quite incredible. Yeah, it is.
And good one.
We'll still have a bit of work to do over the next couple of years, because a few of our players are like 29, 30, even Doherty's up 29.
You will always have a slight flowing generation shift. But
and I can't remember if it was you, Chris, but someone said you've got a continuing need to evolve as a club. Someone said it on COYS yesterday, and it was bang on. You've always got to look to evolve your team constantly. Every single main transfer window. The January windows for me are opportunistic. Opportunities come up, you take them. But the main windows, you should always be looking to evolve your team so that you're never in a complete rebuild. And you can avoid that complete rebuild by phasing.
That would be the perfect squad building.
That is the goal of perfect squad building for me.
That's a good sporting director, though. That's what a good sporting director should be doing.
It is. But what we've done is we have, over the course of last summer, on Ndombele, Lo Celso, Sessegnon, and Clark, now obviously this summer,
Bergwijn.
a lot of players, Bergwijn and Jetson in January, we have completely transformed the squad from what it was, say, 18 to 24 months ago.
No. We're in the younger middle side now of the age parameters, I think. No.
Yeah, I mean, we can obviously still got some work to do. I think there's areas we'll look at, but I think it's great. And I've always thought you should have your top players, and you should fill the squad places with homegrown players, and mainly homegrown players that can come in, do the job, and understand what the club means to the fans, So Skip is a great example. If Skip never becomes good enough to be a first choice holding midfielder, but he becomes good enough to be a backup, that's great. That's still great progress from the academy. And he will always come in to do a job and understand what it means to the club, for the fans, and he'll be a fantastic squad player. And hopefully he'll become more than that. But
I think there's a whole synergy to it as well, because the fans can see one of their own making it through. Like you said, it creates a completely different vibe to like seeing the team and you can see the academy players. But also for the academy players, when we're competing for young academy players around the country, even in Europe, they can see a pathway from going from an academy player into Spurs, or even as a rotation player. It energizes the entire academy, but also potential academy signings. So it benefits us all the way around. And it leaves us more funds to then go get those key players who can actually elevate the first team. So it works all the way around, like a kind of a positive spiral, really.
Right, gents, I'm going to move it on. Speaking of extra funds, because that leads us in nicely. We qualified for the Europa League group stages. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't see much of this other than sort of a few highlights because they were on some sports channel that I know, no one could access. But obviously we qualified. We got a couple of good away wins. Scraped a couple of good away wins, and then obviously a thumping win over Maccabi Haifa. What did you make of the 3 games overall? Was it just a case of get through it, or
get the job done? Yeah, I thought all 3 matches we didn't actually play that well. I know we scored like 7 goals. I think it was against Maccabi Haifa, but they were. By the way, I just want to say they were like incredible going forward. They were better than some of the Premier League teams going forward. They just couldn't defend at all and had no control over a football match. But
us in the 90s to the thousands.
Yeah, kind of, a little bit. Aussie Ardealers 11. They were just piling forward. I've never seen a team have so many shots. It was like AVB's dream side, basically. But shoot from anywhere.
It was tough on 8. First 2 months, it actually looked like a structured team. And after that, it was just give the ball to Bale. But
give the ball to Bale. We did what we had to do. I panicked a couple of times. I did. But I think we utilised those games as fitness exercises as well. I know it sounds a bit dangerous, but
we were playing.
I think he knew we had the quality to get through, and he utilised them to get fit.
Well, they've got the likes of Ndombele got some minutes in his legs, and that's really helped him push on into the Premier League.
And not just that, like the way he performed in those games could transform his Spurs career.
Turn the game, didn't he? In the
because of that, and it sometimes, I think I mentioned before when we were talking about Ndombele, little moments sometimes can define players' careers, and that little moment of him coming on and making the difference in a Europa League qualifier against who knows, don't even know the name of the Plovdiv, could help be the making of him, those little things. So it was great. We got the job done and got some fitness in the legs. And look at the contrast between the Everton game from the first game of the season and then the other Premier League game since half-time really against Southampton. Completely different team. Completely. We'll come on to that, obviously. But
I mentioned Ndombele there. He's obviously, I remember one of the sort of earlier COYS lives I was talking about, I was saying, look, either play him or sell him. No half measures, none of this.
I agree.
And we're utilising him quite well, I think.
I think he's managed him really well so far.
Yeah, I think so.
I know Southampton brought him off half-time, but I got it. I wasn't particularly happy in the moment, but in hindsight, when I reflected on it, it made sense. He had a booking, he was tiring, doesn't want him to do a stupid challenge and be out 2-3 games with a suspension. So it works, obviously.
But I also think you're right. We were playing players into form as well, because again, the preseason was short. They've had different obligations, some of them before arriving. Guy like Doherty, whatever.
Yeah,
it's the Irish pronunciation is. Like he hasn't had a preseason, and he came from having loads more games last season than a lot of our players had. So he had to play. He's still playing himself in form, I think.
Still is, yeah.
And Reguilón is the same. Ndombele also had a difficult corona, allegedly. Seems that he had
Celso even, because he had that injury, so he hasn't had a clean pre-season.
But again, we were actually talking in the last slide, weren't we, that Mourinho, with all this schedule looking very dense, that he was clever to use that to his advantage, like rotate a lot.
He has used the players better than...
And he's done exactly that. Like, I think we're seeing a bit like how clever he is.
To be fair to him, he has used the players really well so far. And hopefully he'll continue to do that when we get to the group stage. I've got a lot more confidence in him now with that, having seen what he did. How honestly, how he managed that week where, as far as I'm concerned, we'll come on to that, we won 4 games in a week, as far as I'm concerned, not 3. it's quite incredible because I've never seen a team have to play that fast, like Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. That's just
and
insane.
do so well.
And do so well.
Well,
Like I said, as far as I'm concerned, we won
One
four.
defeat in 11 now, I think.
Yeah. Well, should we move on to looking at the Premier League results so far?
Can I just say one thing?
Oh, sorry, go on.
On the Europa League, because I see people saying, we've conceded a bit too much for Mourinho's team, which is partially true. It's just about 1 per game. But if you look at the goals conceded, including Europa League, bar one, the Southampton first goal, they've all been set pieces or incredible shots from distance. Could we have defended them better? The shots, maybe. But we're still talking, we're cutting the goals conceded down to basically like awesome wonder strikes or set pieces, which are things we can work on more, but it's no longer being cut open in open play. So
I'd be interested to see what the XG against us is actually so far this season.
We've conceded against one goal
like negative,
in open play. One goal.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's
Yeah.
Southampton created a couple of chances against us, but then apart from that, and I know Man U hit the post, that was offside actually, so that doesn't count. But Southampton created a few, but then after that, really, we've been quite in control.
Yeah, also the Ings goal, you have to give him that. I mean, it's a good chip by Walker.
It was poor defending, but it was...
It is, but it's poor defending, but the way he uses it with the first touch and then the strike on the second touch.
Poor goalkeeping as well. I think Hugo should say that as well, but we'll come on to the...
That's harsh, man. It's a very good striking like that.
It was.
We're going on to the Premier League. So I think it's fair to say, I mean, it's probably best to talk about sort of overall patterns, because obviously we know about the games themselves. Obviously, you know that Everton was brutal as a performance. Southampton was pretty poor first half, but then improved significantly, and we really found a way to play. Newcastle was one of the greatest robberies ever, and Man United was a glorious festival of fun. But what have you noticed about what's been happening? So obviously, picking out things from individual games or patterns over time. And Lex, you're big on your tactics. Do you want to start us off here? What have you seen?
Well, actually, I think this ties into what it means having signed the players we've signed, because having signed Reguilón, we've changed the formation or the system, actually, not just the formation. So 1-2 hybrid and a 4-4-2 when we defend low. Now we play actually straight out. We still can play 4-4. No, we're not even. We're playing 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, and we seem to be interchanging between the two. Against Newcastle, we played 4-2-3-1, and against United in possession, played 4-3-3. So he's like playing around with how the triangle is in the midfield, but we're basically playing a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 with the width coming from the fullbacks, the three forwards being pretty close to each other. The 10 seems to more dominate the right side, and whoever we've got on the left side of the three forwards falls low and kind of presents himself between the line and the left side between the lines. So we have like 2 people presenting between the lines, 3 forwards lying close to each other, 2 wing backs bumping up, and then a defensive block of 4 that's lying low, protecting the 2 defensive midfielders and the 2 centre backs.
Højbjerg's role seems to have changed from that first match, Lex, as well.
He's a 6 now.
Yeah, like he's playing as a 6 now, to me.
He's a 6. Mm-hmm. What we variate is if do we have 1 10 and 1 8, or we have 2 6s and a 10 basically. Or even against United we had 1 6 and 2 8s. So against United we almost played a traditional 4-3-3 possession. Basically, we had the 2 8s lying not between the lines, but just in front of the lines, and then the 6 lying below them controlling, and 3 narrow forwards and 2 wide fullbacks. Yeah. He was amazing in that game, by the way.
It was
very few mistakes, talking.
I tell you, if he can maintain that level, if he can maintain that kind of level, then he will be a far better player than I thought he was going to be. I'll put it that way. It will be.
Well, the 3 of us
if he can play that kind of level. He was absolutely superb in that match.
The 3 of us had quite a few conversations before he signed about what his role might be and whether we were sort of concerned or not.
Guys, I'm hearing 2 of you now.
Okay, can you hear me? All right. The 3 of us had quite a few conversations on the board about what it might be and what his role might be. But it definitely changed. Second half against Southampton, like the whole team, he just seemed to sit deeper, and he was marauding before. He's so much better just sat, and he can just control. And he's a leader. Tim Spurs just said here, he's a leader, which has really been impressive. The pass for Aurier was phenomenal. That was lovely football, actually. Generally, the whole move was the antithesis of the first goal, which was actually superb. One touch over for United, to be fair, for that first goal. But there we are. So Højbjerg's role has been very, very important. Can I
Yeah.
just get your thoughts on Harry Kane and where he's been playing? Because what I think's been
But I think
is he seems to have been starting high, dropping quite deep. I think
yeah.
the phrase that you
That's what
might
I'm saying.
use,
We have one of the three forwards. We even had then it's the hybrid as well, where we're trying to have between the lines in that system, the hybrid system, we actually didn't have anyone between the lines. So one of the forwards had to constantly drop. And you had this game about who drops when to become unpredictable for the adversary. Now it seems more regulated. When we play the 4-2-3-1, so Lo Celso dominates the right space between the lines, and Son or Kane will take turns in falling deep. More often Kane, because Son is so quick, he can go into, he pulls away the defender, presents himself to the lines, and Son goes into the space. But he's always done that, and he's always done this amazingly. He just used to do the second assist, not the first assist. So I don't think he's showing that much. He's always been showing. He's just now getting the record assist, and instead of being a second assist man.
The system we're playing is allowing him to get that direct first assist more. Because we used to have Eriksen is the playmaker.
Yeah.
So Kane had those capabilities, but he had Eriksen was the go-to man to create stuff for us. Now we don't have Lo Celso isn't Eriksen. I did say this. So Lo Celso is more of a David Silva type player to me, but he isn't a direct playmaker like Eriksen. But with him in there and Kane in there, Kane can act as a playmaker, and Lo Celso is a playmaker.
So we've divided into two zones, the right and left
it's
zone.
Actually better. As a team, it's harder to stop. As a team, it's harder to stop because you've got multiple players that can fulfill those roles.
And also, you can't predict that Kane will fall deep because sometimes it's Son. So, the centre backs can't just say, "Oh, Kane is falling deep."
Kane's playing like 9.5 to me. He's playing sometimes as a number 9,
see what you think.
Sometimes as a 10. Yeah, go on.
So I reckon. So what I've noticed, and I haven't said this on the board yet for fear of utter mockery, but I feel like Kane is playing like Firmino, but on like a whole other level.
No, it is.
He starts as the 9, then drops in and allows the two wide forwards to come further forward.
But
and when you stick Bale in that as well, what do you reckon is that as a comparison?
I think that's reasonable. I think it's reasonable. He's doing it to a higher level, because, but I think that's a reasonable comparison to make, because at times he's right on the centre backs, but other times he drops right into the pocket, and as soon as he drops, Son makes run. Yeah. As soon as he drops in, Son goes. And especially if the line is high, like against Southampton, they don't even look at each other. They don't look at each other. They just know it's two things. It's one, it's the length of time they've played with each other. They know their games inside out. And two, it's 100% coached patterns of play. They're clearly working on that in training. Kane drops, Son goes, and when Bale comes in, I reckon it'll be similar on the right. So it might be at times Kane drops off, Bale goes.
I was about to say this. But that poses another question, though, because then you have the whole front three will be able to drop deep and play make, basically. So
how do you
the 10 that's divided into sides. Like Lo Celso seems to dominate the right side between the lines, and then Son and Kane can be unpredictable about who drops on their side. Most often will be Kane, but it can also be Son sometimes.
And if you play the midfield three with Ndombele, if you put Ndombele in there as well, you've got another playmaking
where he plays in the three.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it becomes part of like, are we playing the 4-3-3 or the 4-2-3-1? Because when we're playing the 4-3-3, the 2 8s are not like city 8s where they're between the lines. They're beyond the line. So in that case, it has to be one of the forwards that has to fall deep and presents himself between the lines. When we're playing with the tenor, the 4-2-3-1, at current, it seems to be the tenor. It has the right lateral side, and we leave the left for Kane and Son to basically dominate. But when Bale comes in, as you say, suddenly we have a capacity to have them drop wherever along the line. Like the right side can drop, the left side can drop, and the center can drop. So the 10 now has to choose. And it might become because it becomes so unpredictable, the players might find it harder to actually manage. Because now it's more regimented, as you say, it's trained. So we'll see how that works out. And we'll see if Mourinho goes in and still says right side is the 10, left side is more free for the two forwards of that side to dominate. We'll see, but I think we might change it a little bit, as you say, when Bale comes in, because he can do it.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see how the right side does change, because Lucas and Lamela, they're not very good at all at making runs behind, but they are good at working back. Bale isn't so good at working back, but he's very, very good in the final third. So we'll have to create a change within our tactical system to get the best out of him, because he isn't going to be tracking back 30, 40 yards to make a sliding tackle in my majority of the time anyway. But what he will be able to do is pick up the ball in a half turn and turn what looks like a half decent attack into a goal or a clear opportunity, which Lamela and Lucas can't do most of the time.
Do you think he might lopside it a bit like he did with the fullbacks? So either Son or Bale playing with either, say, Bale and Bergwijn and Son and Lucas.
I think he'll play both. I just don't think he won't look at it and say, "I've got Son and Bale and not play one of them." He'll be thinking, "I want these three on the pitch with these two on the pitch with Kane."
agree,
because the goals there, potentially, you can be talking about 50, 60, 70 league goals between three players. Like,
but
that's
I do
the potential.
I think Mourinho is, again, he is a systems man, like in the sense that he will have a role and a kind of play he wants to see. Yeah. And I think, but the question was, is it going to change with Bale? Because I agree with Nick that Bale is a better and more complete player than Lucas is, or even Bergwijn, though I like Bergwijn. And Lamela, he likes to go through between the lines, but he's not a playmaker because he holds the ball too long and he's too one-footed as well. So suddenly now you have, of the front three, all of them with a similar capacity, of course, Kane being the best one, to fall deep and give the ball as well as run beyond the ball, as Nick was talking about. So it changes what we can do. The question is, what does Mourinho want to do? Like, I normally like a simple system, because if you have too much freedom, the players can start being uncertain. And I think the interesting will be, what do we want? Are we now going to have the 2 8s and no 10 and just leave it to the forwards to fall deep and create? Are we still going to have a 10 occasionally and then divide it laterally as we have been? Or is it going to give a complete free roll to the 10 and just move around, and then one of the forwards will just look around, see where the space is, and then drop on the other side? I don't know, but I think that's an interesting
will be when we play better
thing.
Opponents, when we don't have the ball against better opponents. If Bale is playing on the right, he's not going to track back like Lucas or Lamela would. So really, the right-sided centre midfielder is going to have to fill that pocket.
We just haven't seen Bale, have we really? What is Bale
2020?
It's true. I don't know.
But Bale's Bale's always been a little bit lazy tracking back. Like, even in his best, I don't know if people remember. Look, going forward is insanely good, but he was sometimes a little bit lazy coming back.
But also remember who he played for. Remember who he played for as well. Harry Redknapp.
True.
And Villas-Boas just give him the ball and he'll make a goal.
Actually, that's true, Lex. And as I said before we started this, his fitness and his motivation are the two driving factors between how successful he'll be. If his motivation looks high to me from everything we're hearing, so if he stays fit, he could destroy the Premier League for a couple of years, because no one can defend, as Chris was saying before we started. So if that's the case, if he is really motivated, he'll want to track back. He'll want to win. He'll want this club to succeed. So he might track back better than he would have done at Madrid, for example. So I think we will have to wait and see. But I certainly think if he doesn't track back like Lucas does or Lamela does, then we will have to find a way of filling that space that he will leave in not tracking back, and that will have to come down to one of the midfielders, I think.
But actually, our defensive block is now one man short of what it was in the hybrid, because in the hybrid it was a 5-man defensive block, and now it's a 4-man defensive block with a very narrow strike as well. As the shape we have now is very similar to back in the Pochettino days when we had Walker and Rose. Like 3 narrow forwards, 2 attacking fullbacks, 2 8s, depending on the exact game these days, but 2 8s were not between the lines, were standing part of the defensive block, and 2 centre backs. So, and Dyer isn't that quick, and Alderweireld isn't that quick. So we have to be very careful, as you say, about how we cover the lateral space, especially.
Especially you play against City,
wings have to help it.
Just to move you on a little bit, I want to ask you a couple of questions, just fairly short answers, because we're starting to run out of time. So in the Premier League games or across it, who do you think so far has been sort of maybe the unsung hero a little bit, but also
of ours?
Yes, of ours, yeah. And who's been what moment has given you the most sort of cause for optimism for the season? Not a player signing, but on the pitch, what's made you think, actually, it's going to be all right? That's quite a tough question, but
my unsung player. The second part, I know I've got the answer now.
Go ahead, Nick.
The second part, in terms of what gives me optimism, it isn't one thing. It's since the Everton game, which was a shambles, and that could have been a shambles for many reasons. I don't know how prepped we were compared to Everton. It looked to me like we were in pre-season mode and they weren't, right? Now, and we're not the only team, by the way, because there's other teams that look like they're still in pre-season. the thing that's given me the most optimism is simply the way we've played football against Southampton second half, Newcastle at home, which we got completely and utterly robbed, and Man U. It's the way we play. It's the tempo of the way we play. It's a higher tempo. It's more intent going forward. It's quicker movement and passing off the ball, off the ball, more movement, faster passing. It's just the way we wanted to play and the way we put ourselves into that game was something that I thought, hang on, all right, if we do this across a lot of matches, we're going to be successful and we're going to play good football and score goals. And I could have no arguments with Mourinho, honestly. Because I couldn't sit here and say Mourinho's playing boring football at the moment.
Oh, wait.
No, I couldn't. I'll be absolutely delighted if we turn around and we bang in 70, 80, 90 goals this season and destroy it and play good football. And then if we have a few matches where we play pragmatic and a little bit more boring and we get draws we need, I've got no problem with that. No problem at all. Because I can deal with pragmatic matches if we're going to play football like we've been doing for a lot of the time. Because fun is the word. I just enjoyed watching us play those games. It was just, and like Newcastle game, I thought we were superb. Yes, we missed chances. We did. We should have scored more, but we battered them. And they didn't have a shot on goal.
We did.
They did not have a shot on goal, and we won that game 1-0. That's the last I'm going to say on that game.
This is why performance and results are different things now. So
and the performance is encouraging.
Yeah, definitely.
Since the Everton game.
Lex, what do you reckon then? Who's your unsung hero and what's been the moment?
I like Nick's clever tweak into talking about general character instead of an actual moment. So I concur with that. As I always said, if you have a good system of play, suits the players you have, it's well implemented, they want to play it, they play with energy and discipline, you're on to a good thing. And I think the Newcastle was off for those things. So I agree with Nick. That was the more important thing to see was that. If I'm going into that is now like seemingly in the right place. If I'm going into one element where I thought, this is where we're going to see if we have grown as a side, besides now having a system and playing it with the effort, and do we have the goal now to be a big side? Do we have the goal now to actually win difficult games? Have we changed our mentality, as Mourinho was saying? Is when we went down to United really quick. I was like,
yeah, that's really
stay cool now and work our way into the game. We might be onto something here because we have a good system, we have a good squad, we have good players, but can they do
panic?
It?
We didn't panic. We didn't crumble.
We just like, okay, we got a quick goal, but we got a quick goal because we stayed alert. No, it was a good goal made by pressing as we should and being alert. It's Ndombele. It's Kane who pressures the first header into the United box. Then it's Lamela going into the face of the centre backs. Then it's Ndombele being attentive enough to realize there's probably going to be a loose ball and he runs onto it. So again, it's all like staying alert, sticking to our game plan, being focused. And I said, that's the moment I thought, okay, we have a system that works. We play with intensity. We have good players. But now we also have the head on our shoulders to kind of
just want to
give it a good go.
Something. Sim said that they were awful. I've got an answer to that, Sim. Everyone said Southampton were awful as well. At some point, Newcastle were awful as well. At some point, there has to be a pattern to where you're doing something right if everyone you play looks awful. That's the only thing I'd say about that.
I want to come back to that goal, actually, because I posted on COYS. I rewatched it, and we didn't touch the ball from the throw-on to when Ndombele smashed it in, which I thought was easily the best thing we'll see all season. It's hilarious, the decline of Man United's mentality.
But teams can't defend.
That's also what Lamela gives us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
True.
Just going to come on to Lamela.
A bit like Højbjerg, actually. He lifts the team.
Unsung heroes, you were saying, Chris. Like, in terms of starting players, our best players for me have been Son and Kane, and Højbjerg in the last couple of matches has been outstanding. Unsung, maybe Lamela for his sheer... I mean, against Chelsea, my dad isn't a massive fan of Lamela, but I was speaking to him after the game, and he said, I have to take my hat off to him. He was absolutely outstanding. He worked so hard, and he has done that in several matches. He'll always put in a shift, Lamela, and... Sometimes that's all you need is the right attitude in a game to get you the points you need. Sometimes because you've got quality.
He's set the pace in many things. Also, Sim says Aurier as well, and I was also going to give Aurier a shout out as well.
Well, against United was outstanding.
He's been really good. Can't argue with him. My moment, and it is a specific moment, and it comes back to this idea of mentality as well, because the Chelsea game, not Premier League, admittedly, but the Chelsea game, I think that we picked a side that was clearly wanting to compete and win was really important. I like the idea that we're not going to accept any excuses, any failure. We're here to win everything. We're going to try. We might not get there, but it's not going to be for want of trying and prioritising. We are going to try and do it all. And in that game, what I really liked was there was a moment in the second half when we were under pressure in the left full-back area, and I can't remember who it was, they pinged it into Ndombele, who a couple of players on him all around him, and they trusted him enough to give him the ball under pressure, and they knew that he could make it stick, and then we could play out from him. And that sort of thing is what we used to have with Dembele, and with that we will get fewer mistakes, less panic at the back, and the individual mistakes that we've been making for a couple of years now because we haven't had that outball, that player who can take the pressure off and trust. And that made me think, yeah, you know what, it's going to be all right. Even if we were 1-0 down at that point, but it was a thing that actually those two things together made me feel.
But it's a pretty massive thing. It's a massive thing having someone who can turn under pressure, because
we had it with Modric
like
as well.
most teams, exactly. But if you have that, suddenly the press starts becoming quite complicated, like to make work, because
the opposition
somebody can beat
themselves.
Well,
don't they?
And then and again, how many teams have we punished now with that high line? So if they're trying to press us high, but we can escape the press and play deep immediately and quick players, they're going to start trying close them high. Should we leave them? Should we stand low?
The thing is,
it gets kind of tricky for them that they can no longer just bully us and pressure us on third.
Newcastle dropped off. Newcastle played deep, yet we created chance after chance after chance. That was really encouraging, because normally we struggle against teams that sit back. We should have been 3-4-0 up. So we've shown there in the space of 3 games, Southampton, Newcastle, United, that no matter how the team set up to play against us, we can create chances and score goals. Right? It's only our finishing that cost us against Newcastle. It wasn't the quality of the chance we created. So that's really encouraging as well, because now when we play against Burnley at home and they sit back, we've got Son, Kane and Bale, or whoever comes in, because we've got so much depth there. We know that if we play the right way with 2 full-backs that are going outside to create space and open it up, we can create chances against them. And if they come out at us, like City want to when they play against us, we can create chances against them as well on the counter-attack and beat the press. So we've got a much more complete kind of tactical approach, because we can beat teams in different ways. We can beat teams by sitting off and countering, or by dominating the ball.
It's a conundrum now for the opposition how to approach us much more than
and
before.
that makes us much harder to play against Lex, like we used to be.
And also remember, if you have Son and Kane and Bale on top, we don't likely need that many chances to score goals. No. And again, we've given up 1 goal in open play so far.
Yeah.
So Sage in the comments has just said, improved attitude. Historically, would have folded following the
particularly away from home. Spot on.
And I think they would have just allowed them to just sit and
the fact we scored quickly was so important afterwards. But we didn't just do that.
Again,
then
why did we do it?
When we took the because we were alert, because we weren't sitting there feeling sorry for ourselves, thinking, "Oh, we've conceded, we're going to lose at Old Trafford again." It wasn't like that. It was, no, we're not having this. Yeah. This is our game, and go and get it back. And that was great. It was.
It did fire us up. Safety saying, but it did. But without losing our heads, we don't want another Stamford Bridge meltdown. We want to be fired up cleverly. It has to focus us, and it did. I mean, and again, Chelsea went behind. Stay focused, played aggressively. We came back. For me, that's the thing. Like I said earlier, that's the thing where I thought, we might be onto something now. But and I will say though, as a
intelligent,
Lamela was definitely an intelligent cad.
I'm not saying that word on
but
the
I think the Aurier shout out. But the Aurier shout out is kind of good as well, because here we're talking a player who's had loads of faults, mainly due to lack of concentration and some lack of schooling, but lack of concentration and will. He gets challenged now by a probably more school and better player. And disappear, or he can step up. And he chose to step up and improve his game. And the same thing with Davies. So it's not just about Davies, it's also about the system now allowing for attacking fullbacks and creating space for the fullbacks. So it's not just about the player himself, but it's also about the player himself. They've been challenged, to a degree, and they've taken up the challenge and performed. You know what I mean?
And Dombele's been challenged to a degree, and now it looks to me like he's complete is laughing, he's joking. I know we're being shown these pictures, and obviously there's an element of
course.
they show you what they want.
Propaganda.
But he seems visibly happier on the pitch, and that's the biggest thing. Against
We haven't
Chelsea
even mentioned Dele Alli.
and we haven't mentioned Dele, who's going to have to step up now, and he's going to have to do the same thing. And if he does, he'll have even more depth than we've got. The only area we haven't got top quality depth for me is centre back and defensive midfield, because if Højbjerg's out, we're back to the problem we had last season with Sissoko and Winks. But and centre back, we don't have one centre back that I think, if he's playing, we're in control. I don't have that feeling yet. But then a lot of the teams don't have top centre backs. Not many Premier League teams have a top centre back now.
Birth, isn't there? Right, boys. There's a really good question, but we haven't got time for it. It's 6:00, and I said to you on the chat, if I'm not away by 6:00, I'm going to be banging trouble. So that's probably quite a good time to wrap it up. So thank you everyone for your contribution. It's really good. Hopefully we'll be seeing this very soon. And come on, you Spurs!
Come on, you Spurs!
Come on, Spurs!
Bow.
There's